Okay, Harley, thank you very much. Our great friend Harley Brown is with us. We'll talk to him in the 7 o'clock hour. Before that, we go to our great friend Jenny Beth Martin to talk a little bit about the Tea Party, the grassroots, and America. Jenny, good to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
So here we are, the kids at Parkland going back to school in Florida. That seems to be the big national news. Your thoughts on that and the great gun debate going on?
Well, I am glad that they're going back. I'm sure it's going to be very difficult for them, and they're going to have a lot of mixed emotions this week and over probably the rest of their lives with this situation. And it's a terrible situation, and also what is happening right now with the NRA and the way that many on the left are treating the NRA right now is not a good situation either. And we decided we were going to make a public statement standing up for the NRA and the millions of Americans who are part of the NRA as they join together within that organization using their First Amendment rights to defend the Second Amendment.
Well, you have a lot of people vilifying the NRA, vilifying the Second Amendment, vilifying everything. It's troubling what has happened, but perhaps the results are even more troubling when we have people using it to promote a political agenda.
It is terrible, and I just, if we're watching what has happened in Florida and watching the reaction to it unfold, it's very, very troubling. We cannot have knee-jerk reactions to situations such as this. I think we do need to have thoughtful discussions and make sure that we're doing all we can, certainly to protect schools. I have children who are school-age children myself, and I want to make sure that they are protected. I live in Atlanta, and in Metro Atlanta, there was a school back in October that avoided and averted a Columbine-like incident, even made drudge. And the school board and the sheriff's department there arrested 2 people, and then later in the week arrested 3 more people. They had a show of force. Somebody called an anonymous tip line, and the sheriff's department acted. And there were people who had bomb-making materials, a hit list, and ammunition and weapons. And then in Florida, we have a situation where the police were called dozens of times to the person who did all of this to his home. And many people were calling warning that they were afraid he was going to turn into a school shooter. And instead, the police did not arrest him for anything. And they apparently let him just continue to go on about his life until he actually did great harm. And there were laws already in place that could have protected these students from what happened had those laws been enforced appropriately.
Jenny Beth Martin joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. How do you believe the president has handled this?
I think that one thing that I know about President Trump, or that I believe is true about President Trump, is he's a very compassionate man. I've heard many stories about how he's looked after people who are widows. I think that as he watches what happens down in Florida, he's very moved by this emotionally, and I know that he wants to do what he can to protect schools and not allow anything like this to happen again. And I think that some of what he is suggesting are steps in the right direction, and some of it we just need to take a close look at and make sure those are the right things that we need to be doing.
Well, let's take a look at a few other issues, most notably the battle for the budget. Of course, we love what you've done with the Tea Party, continue to do with the Tea Party, but, you know, it still is a challenge to hold the federal government accountable.
It really, really is. And I appreciate the fact that Congress and the President passed tax reform, and the economy is growing. We've had a lot of regulations that have been rolled back and taken out, so the government is smaller from that. But now we are looking at the government spending, and we're about to see an omnibus bill pass that increase the spending. We've got to make sure it does not include any fix for DACA and grant amnesty to people within the spending bill. And we're going to have to look out to make sure that the Republican majority-controlled Congress does not go back and bail out insurance companies after they prevented that from happening during the time when President Obama was in office. And so it's one of these things where I've learned you have to give carrots when elected officials do the right thing and tell them you appreciate it. And when they do the wrong thing, you have to melt the phone lines and hold them accountable and remind them of their campaign promises. We need to be working towards a debt-free future, not spending more and more and more money.
Well, of course, we continue to kick the can down the road. And that's one of the reasons why the Tea Party rose to power and continues to be a force. Yet, Jenny, as someone who has tackled the media, continues to fight the media again and again and again, the idea of making sure that people are empowered, remembering that they do have the power, because you have a lot of politicians, local politicians here in Idaho, that pretty much they get elected and they serve the big money folks, the lobbyists, as opposed to the people that actually vote.
That is very true, and I've found that happens at the national level and certainly at state levels as well. And that's why groups like Tea Party Patriots, like the NRA, other groups where you can join together as an individual citizen and make your voice heard and express your thoughts on a particular issue or set of issues in a group with other people. That's how you can wind up leveraging your voice to be even have more of an impact and be able to stand up to the lobbying type interest. And it's really oftentimes what I do with Tea Party Patriot Citizens Fund. It's called grassroots lobbying. And it's where you learn from an organization what's happening, and then you pick up the phone as an individual voter and take action and call at other voters in your same area, in your state, or in your congressional district, or locally, your state legislative or state rep level do the same thing. And it makes a difference. And I know that we hear from time to time, especially people who've been involved in the Tea Party movement for many years, they say, we have to make phone calls again. We have to make calls again. And the calls don't make a difference. But the fact is the calls do make a difference. And the left right now has realized that the calls make a difference, and they're making oftentimes more calls than we are. So it's important that if you care about the issues of the day, the government spending, making sure we continue to protect the Second Amendment, then you've got to pick up the phone and call your congressman, call your senators. And if your state is looking like they're doing anything, call your state rep and your state senators as well. Make your voices heard and make sure your elected officials know what you, their constituents, think.
Jenny Beth Martin joining us here as we continue on talking about, empowering America with the Tea Party Patriots. And, of course, when we take a look at the Tea Party Patriot Citizens Fund, this is where grassroots money makes a difference. Are you worried about what we're seeing with this media narrative continuing to attack the Second Amendment and using children? And you as a parent, you as a taxpayer, you have this hits close to home to everyone, Jenny Beth. So your thoughts on, are we having a dialogue, or are we just trying to quell this, debate here?
I would like it to be a dialogue, so I think it's important that we have a dialogue. I think right now a lot of what we're seeing is not quite a dialogue, and it's pulling, especially the students from the high school in Florida, pulling them in the midst of their grief. Now, at the same time, I do understand that they're grieving and they're angry and they want to do something so they can feel safe, and I appreciate that. I think, though, that because they're in the midst of all of this grief, they're not looking at all of the facts that others are looking at. And right now, I think it's important that the first places that we're looking are what happened with See Something, Say Something, whether it's at the local sheriff's level or at the FBI level down in Florida, and what's broken in the current system that's supposed to prevent these kind of tragedies, and how do we ensure that whatever is broken in that current system gets fixed. And that's what I'm the most focused on right now. And I just keep thinking, I compare what happened in Atlanta to what happened in Florida. In Atlanta, they averted a tragedy. And it makes me wonder how many other places in the country are like Atlanta, and the same to happen in Metro Atlanta, where they avoided a Columbine-like incident at a local high school, and what worked there versus what we're seeing in Florida, and how many other places around in South Florida and around the country are people calling in saying, hey, we're worried about this particular person, and the sheriffs aren't doing anything about it. And I think some of that's going to play out, and we'll learn more about it, but I think that we've got to fix the current system and enforce the current laws before we go and enact new laws.
And Jenny Beth, if people would like to get involved and learn what they can do to bring back some order and control, what can they do?
Well, you can get involved with us at TeaPartyPatriotsCitizensFund.com. Again, that's TeaPartyPatriotsCitizensFund.com. And we have weekly action items, whether it's on the budget and spending, the Second Amendment, or as we move into campaign season, elections. And we help everyone be able to join together and leverage our voices so we can have an even bigger impact on the issues we care about.
Well, I mean, the country deserves it, does it not?
It does. It does. It's hard work. Standing up for our freedom and our liberties is something that we have to do, and it never ends. But it's also worth it because it sets the terms that we're going to live our life, and our children will live their lives on. And so it's worth all the effort and energy it takes, and the frustration sometimes that we experience.
Well, keep up the great work. We'd love to have you back.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being with you.
All right. Jenny Beth Martin coming up next. Dick's Sporting Goods says no more AR-15s. Do you believe that will keep America safe, that will keep your kids safe? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And blessed to be on our flagship station, 580 AM and 107.5 FM, our newest affiliate, Kevin Miller in the morning here. The KIDO Talk Radio contingency, commandos, contenders continues to grow, and most notably, Dick's Sporting Goods. That's right. Dick's Sporting Goods has decided they're going to ban sales of the assault rifles. Again, I'm trying to figure out what really is an assault rifle. Can you just say a rifle that shoots bullets? Is that an assault rifle? Anyway, and what is a non-assault rifle? Is that a friendly rifle? Anyway, Good Morning America recently, the CEO, Ed Stack, appeared to talk to George Stephanopoulos. And here's what he had to say why Dick's Sporting Goods will say that they're not going to sell high-capacity magazines and everything else. Here's the other thing. What gun is acceptable to the folks that want to ban the ARs? Really? I mean, is it a squirt gun? Is it a shotgun? Is it a musket? Some people on the extreme will say muskets because that's when the Second Amendment was written. Let's take a listen, and you've heard enough of me, and I'd love to hear from you at 580-5436-580-KIDO.
He's here to explain why. Good morning, Ed. This is a dramatic move. Tell us why you're taking it.
Well, thanks for having me today to talk about this. And as we looked at what happened down in Parkland, and we were so disturbed and saddened by what happened, we felt we really needed to do something. And so we've decided not to sell these assault weapons any longer in any of our stores, and the other things that we talked about.
Yeah, and the shooter down in Parkland actually bought a gun at a Dick's store, not the assault weapon.
Right, he did, and he bought a shotgun from us back in November, and it wasn't the gun, nor it was the type of gun that he used in the shooting. But when that happened, we realized that the system, and we did everything by the book. We did everything that the law required, and still he was able to buy a gun.
Amazing that he was able to buy one.
He was still able to buy a gun. And when we looked at that, we said, the systems that are in place across the board just aren't effective enough to keep us from selling someone a gun like that.
There we have it, the CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods. So now they're saying they want to raise the age of purchasing a weapon, a gun, to 21. Now, does that mean it's going to be knives as well? Does that mean that hammers will not be sold to people under the age of 21. Look, thank you, Harley, for the cough there. Our friend Harley Brown, it's okay. He's with us. He's warming up literally in the bullpen. We'll talk to him about his latest gubernatorial run in the 7 o'clock hour. We always love Big Harley, and we'll have him on in the 7 o'clock hour. But here, think about this at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. What are they advocating? Okay, you have to be 21 to buy a weapon. Tell me what is acceptable to the people that have seized this opportunity to attack, to say that it's time that you don't have a right to keep and bear arms. Look, we've seen this with the government. Why do people want to keep their guns? It's very simple. They do not trust the government. Is that an extremist point of view? No, of course not. Go back to the Founding Fathers. They didn't trust the government, and they created the government through the grace of God, right? And every time government says they're going to do something for the good, hey, a temporary tax, a this, that, and the other, government always sticks it to us. So of course we're not going to believe government. And of course you have the right to keep and bear arms. Of course you have the right to purchase a weapon. Now, it's funny. I don't remember this outrage when the members of Congress were gunned down. And granted, children are precious. But where were the calls to ban these weapons when that happened, or in the incident in Las Vegas? Your calls next. First, traffic and weather together. The time. And we continue on. Let's go to Peyton from the Young Conservatives of Idaho with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Peyton.
Good morning, Kevin. Just really quick this morning, I wanted to talk about, you reminded me of something actually when I was listening to you. If people want to be reminded of lawmakers' true intentions, just think about if they really cared about the safety of people and violence and they wanting to end that, then the laws that they'd be writing would scope everything that people will kill each other with: bombs, materials to make bombs, guns, knives, everything. The mental health laws would scope all of those things, but their specific goal is assault rifles and high cap mags. Why? Because that's our last line of defense. So, and people who think that it's extremist not to trust our government, just look at, do you trust Hillary Clinton? Yes or no? If your answer is no, people like that are in our government. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you very much, Peyton. Thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio. We go to David in Nampa. David, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Listen, this is not a red state, blue state. It's a sheepdogs thing. You know, the sheep hate the sheepdogs. We should get into that someday. That, you know, for a couple of reasons, but one of them is sheep are made out of meat. What eats meat? The wolf. What also eats meat? Sheepdog. That is why the sheep hate the sheepdog, because it protects the sheep, but they're too stupid to know it. They see in the sheepdog, the sheep see in the sheepdog, enough of the wolf, and that is why the sheep hate the sheepdog. You know, but let me get you what this assault weapons thing is. An assault weapon is a weapon used by the boogeyman. Okay, there's no such thing. Okay, there is a semi-automatic weapon in which, when the trigger is pulled, the gun recocks itself, so you can pull the trigger once. That's what an AR-15 is, by the way. That is a semi-automatic weapon. An automatic weapon, which have been illegal for like 80 years now, you have to really jump through hoops to get them, is a weapon when the trigger is pulled, it will continue releasing bullets until the trigger is released or until the weapon is empty. An assault weapon, as I said, has any number of evil features, including a rifle with a pistol grip, a folding stock, a bayonet, because Lord knows drive-by bayonettings are a real issue. You know, people want these guns. And what they said about the Declaration of Independence, and then we had the Constitution, and then we had the Bill of Rights. Now, the argument against the Bill of Rights were logically correct, but of course, logic in government, you can see that problem. It is the nature of government to bust a fence. So Ronald Reagan taught his son, Michael, to hunt on a gun that was going to be banned under an assault weapon. And I don't think he used his, machine gun, high-capacity magazines. I want good people to have high-capacity magazines, but that scares the sheep. You know, it's too sheepdog-like. You know, so they'll define an assault weapon, and then they'll put, like the witches in Macbeth who told the truth. You won't be killed by any man born of woman. Well, he heard you not be killed by any man, but his enemy was delivered by C-section. Things like that. So he's putting a different trigger on. Is that an aid to firing, and will that make the gun illegal? I mean, they'll word it one way, and then they'll take basically half the guns in creation. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, David. Thank you for the call and listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Let's find out what's happening in your world. Good morning, Maggie. And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Some good news that came out of the Olympics, even though it was one of the lowest rated ever. And, again, a little counter-narrative to what we hear everywhere else. Oh, the Olympics were great. And, look, it's wonderful that you have people that commit themselves to, snowboarding and snow skiing. I think what really hurts the Winter Olympics, and I know you didn't ask for this, but is this issue involving making it into the X Games where they have all these people doing these incredible stunts. But is that the same thing as speed skating? You go back to Eric Heiden or you go back to some of these great winter athletes, and they've been marginalized, at least in my opinion, by the snowboarders and such. But I digress. But some U.S. Olympians didn't just return from South Korea with memories and medals. They also brought dogs with them. Dogs they rescued that were destined for dinner tables there, right? Because that's a big delicacy in Korea is dog.
Having somebody like her that has many followers and people that look to her, it's very helpful because it'll shine a light on that and have a bigger impact in the end. Exactly.
The idea of saving our four-legged furry family members. Harley, you're going to have to go get some water or something because that's what we call the tune-out when all of a sudden we have you coughing all the time. Not that I mind because I find it endearing, but some people, you're not an offensive guy, and neither am I. We don't want to offend people with the cough. All right, so just make yourself at home, and we appreciate that. Our great friend Harley Brown. Now, federal immigration officials now accuse a California mayor of putting them in danger as they raided homes of people who were in the country illegally. And by the way, it's kind of like a double negative in math. Not only are they here illegally, which makes them criminals, but they were here criminally illegally. In other words, they were criminals here illegally, breaking laws, and, well, the mayor of this one California city tipped them off. Maybe she should do some time. Let's take a listen from our own Claudia Cohen at KIDO Talk Radio.
Tipping off illegal immigrants that federal enforcement raids were imminent, Fox News rode along as ICE officers moved out across Northern California.
We talking about your arrest. You got arrested on February, right? Yes.
Targeting homes since sanctuary laws prevent them from making arrests at local jails. Speaking exclusively to Fox News, the head of ICE's enforcement and removal blasted Mayor Libby Schaaf, saying her decision to announce the raids put lives at risk. ICE officials say they're asking the Department of Justice to look into whether she violated any laws, and if so, hold her accountable for protecting people who are breaking the law by being in the country illegally.
There we have it. We'll talk more about that, but first let's go to your phone calls. Arvel in Fruitland. Do we trust the government when it comes to our guns? Good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Well, that's what I was wanting to comment on, Kevin, but I'd want to raise a question about how are we able to trust the liberal left in our country. And I want to have you and the audience consider that the left supports the mass murdering of preborn babies at the rate of 3,624 babies killed each day since 1973. I'm using the figure of 60 million babies killed since then. That's mass murder on a daily scale, and the left supports that. Now, do you believe that the left is above allowing 17 or more students being killed to advance their agenda of getting rid of guns?
Can't follow you there, Arvel.
Yeah? You say you can't follow?
Can't go there, Arvel.
I know. You wouldn't with pro-life either. And but I want you to consider that. I mean, consider their attack on Trump. There's no holds barred. portraying him being assassinated, things like that. I mean, they voted for Hillary, modern-day Jezebel. Doesn't that tell you something about their mental and moral state?
Tells them about their political decisions, but with all due respect, look, well, the great thing about this program is it's not agreement radio, but we appreciate everybody's opinion.
Okay.
You've asked my opinion. I can't go there, and I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't want to think that, and I hope you respect my view as much as I respect yours. We may not agree, but we can show the left by example that we can have a rational conversation.
Well, I certainly do. I'm not saying that was the situation in Florida.
You're saying hypothetically. You're saying hypothetically.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. Okay, that's where I stand. I'm not saying that happened in Florida, but how else do you explain the lack of dealing with this situation there?
Well, very simply, you have an incompetent sheriff's department. You have an FBI who, look, the FBI are the best, bravest, and brightest. We don't want to, disparage the good people in the FBI, but you got some people that are trying to get Trump in the FBI. So, what's the common thread in all this, Arvell? You go back to Las Vegas. The Air Force didn't tell the FBI or whomever that this guy had issues. So he bought a bunch of weapons, which is his right. Okay. This kid in Florida, the killer, he was trouble and everybody ignored him. But we're not talking about firing the Broward County Sheriff. I think Sean Hannity was last night, but he's about the only one.
Well, I do have a grave concern about the left because, first of all, they can work with the Muslims because they, too, believe in that it's honorable to lie and to kill to advance their cause for Allah. I think if they get into power, I mean the liberal left, which could very well happen, persecution is going to happen to Christians, especially like never before in this country.
Well, I think we've seen that, Arvell. Thank you for the call, and thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, do you agree with the president? He says he's going to make the law no matter what.
By the way, bump stocks, we're writing that out. I'm writing that out myself. I don't care if Congress does it or not. I'm writing it out myself, okay? You put it into the machine gun category, which is what it is. It becomes essentially a machine gun, and nobody's going to be able. It's going to be very hard to get them. So we're writing out bump stocks.
Well, I'm glad that we have a Constitution. The president can make it up as he goes. Let's go to Damon in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Damon.
Hey, Kevin. How are you?
Not bad. Fighting off a cold, and hopefully that Harley won't give me his. But are you?
I'm good. Hey, I was just listening to Ed's statement from Dick's, and he closed that out by saying he couldn't believe that they sold the kid a gun like that. And I was just bothered by the way that was worded, because I think what it should have said is they should have been bothered that they sold a kid like that a gun. It makes it sound like the gun is the whole issue, and it's not. It's not the gun. It's the person behind it.
Well, Damon, you're so correct. Of course, the media continues to focus on the gun, but you're right. You are totally right. It is the person who's responsible, not the weapon.
Yeah, I think it's just the way the media and the work to push it and make it seem like it's all the gun. It's just a piece of metal and parts. It doesn't do anything. It's the person behind it. Anyway, thank you, Kevin. Great show, and I seriously enjoy listening to it.
All right, Damon, thank you very much. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Now, as most of you know, that, we support the president, but that doesn't mean that we follow him lockstep. It's like Harley. We like Harley, but, there are a lot of Harleyisms that maybe we don't agree with, and Harley Brown can appreciate that. That's why we're the first stop on his world media tour for his campaign for governor, which we'll talk about next hour. But we'll continue on at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. But I want your thoughts on this one.
By the way, bump stocks, we're writing that out. I'm writing that out myself. I don't care if Congress does it or not. I'm writing it out myself, okay? you put it into the machine gun category, which is what it is. It becomes essentially a machine gun, and nobody's going to be able. It's going to be very hard to get them. So we're writing out bump stocks.
Are you down with the president saying he's the boss of everybody and he's going to make it up as it goes? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And don't forget, coming up next hour, Harley Brown back in the saddle running for the governorship one more time. This guy's not running, but he should. He's run before. Our great friend Tom Munns, TomMunns.com, Munns Tom Twitter. Good morning, Tom.
Kevin, thanks for having me on. Hey, got a couple, I know I'm up against the hour here, so I'll try to be quick. I was listening to the radio show yesterday about guns, and people said we need, common sense gun control. We're literally buying sort of the subversive lines and the fact that it's all about our kids. And, very few people mention the fact that Article 5 is extremely important. It deals directly with the question that you were asking about the president. Should he have the authority to just make it up as he goes along? And, obviously, that as well as I do by your question is the fact that he doesn't have that authority. And I think that there should be some outward condemnation by the gun community and the fact that he doesn't have any authority to do that. He can line it up with machine guns. He can line it up with whatever he wants, but the federal government does not have the authority to be able to restrict firearms at all. I mean, it's a fact. And anybody that does that should be called out as somebody that's violating their oath. And so I wanted to mention that. The other thing is that I hear a lot from, Arvell and stuff like that about, we blame the left, that the left kills babies. Well, it's not just the left that kills babies. And I'm almost offended the fact that the left gets that much credit. The Republicans kill just as many babies as the left does. And whether that's true in whole or in part, it doesn't matter because most Republicans refuse to be able to, like Idaho being the most conservative state in the union, refuses to be able to pass to completely abolish abortion, not just regulate murder. And then the other one thing I have to tie it all in is, Kevin, when there's a call, to the best of my knowledge and from what I know about law enforcement doesn't call into their sheriff and say, hey, should we enter this school where their shooter is? They're trained to act already. The fact that the sheriff was derelict in his duties was a separate issue from the sheriff's deputies not entering the building, I think. I think it's ridiculous to be able to think that somehow they didn't enter because the sheriff told them not to. This thing stinks to high heaven. They're talking about multiple shooters. Everybody refuses to talk about psychotropic drugs. Our kids, we are drugging our children and we're indebting our children and we're shackling our children, and it's our fault that the suicide rate is going crazy, and it's our fault that the left, I guess, if you will, is winning because we're allowing them to change the narrative, and we just stand back and complain on the radio. And I'd like to see more action than that, to be honest.
Well, what type of action would you like to see?
Well, one of the things I really suggested was, instead of having Second Amendment rallies, which as well as I do, I absolutely support, I think that we should have an American rally right in front of the media and line their sidewalks. We should be able to control the narrative over what media does. And if the media thinks and the government thinks they're going to restrict the rights to the free speech of America, then Americans need to restrict the freedom of speech to the media, period.
All right, Tom Munns, traffic and weather together. Our time is 6. And we go to Hank in Boise with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Okay. 20 years ago, a toleration of violence was openly discussed in the Clinton administration to basically promote a gun control agenda. And it was also discussed with his media acolytes in the mainstream media. And also, I might point out, the whole point of Obama's Fast and Furious was to create to give the arm to the Mexican cartels, was to create an atmosphere of promoting gun control and basically discrediting the Texas gun dealers who the Department of Firearms and Tobacco and Alcohol were buying the arms from in order to put further restrictions on gun dealers to create a political hit. Backfired on them, but the use of violence is not beyond the liberal establishment in order to promote this agenda. You never let a good thing go, as Rahm Emanuel says, in order to promote your agenda. So our bill's not that far off.
Are you going to go there with Arvell?
Well, I'm just saying that these people are not scrupulous in terms of morality. Everything, the political ends that justifies the means, and this is something the difference between one of the fundamental differences between the right and the left in this country. The left always can justify anything if it promotes to them a noble end. That's not the case on our side of the fence. And it's also, they know how to fight. We don't know how to fight.
We're trying to be people's friends.
Oh, yeah, we're trying to be people's friends. And the same thing here. Basically, the president's appeasement on the issue only defeats the liberal desire for further gun control. You never can satisfy these people. This is the problem with the rhinos in the Republican Party or the McCains. You can never bend over enough to satisfy these people. They're insatiable. You can't, and compromise to them is one way. You compromise, you give ground, they don't give an inch.
Hank, thank you for the call.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. 580-5436, 580-KIDR, top national story. Dick's Sporting Goods saying they're not going to sell AR-15s or quote-unquote assault rifles anymore. And the mayor of Oakland warning illegals, get out of town. The government's coming to get them.
Spreading rumors of ICE activities has been used as a tactic to strike fear and paralysis in the immigrant communities. This is something that I thought about very carefully before bringing this information forward.
Right. She tipped off the illegals, the criminals, that ICE was coming to get them. Whew. Those stories and more next with me, Kevin Miller, on KIDO Talk Radio, Fox News on the radio, right here in the Treasure Valley.